right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. David Patrick Carey with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by some of my favorite guests we've had, renowned researchers, the Collins brothers. How are you guys doing?
Not bad. How are you, David? Doing well.
Doing great. Doing great. I really appreciate you guys making the time today. I was telling you backstage that as soon as these disclosures came out, what was it, a couple weeks ago, I was anxious to get your guys' opinions on everything going on because some of your commentary regarding the UFO, alien, I would argue PSYOP, I think is some of the best commentary out there.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So before we even get into your thoughts, because we're going to be discussing everything from the recent disclosure, the recent documents that have been released, and even maybe predictive programming with the new movie coming out, Disclosure Day. But for anybody watching who may be new to the whole alternative theories regarding the U.S. government's position on UFOs and aliens, would you guys kind of presenting what's the phenomenon is, starting with Roswell moving forward?
Yeah. So with Roswell in 1947, and with what was also some of the various sightings that we're seeing at around that same time, what we had there was kind of what we've referred to as the cover-up phase.
Oh, I think their internet cut out. Hold on with me, guys. I think it's just they should be back here in a second. While we're waiting on him, Patrick, thank you so much, brother. Throws in a $20 super chat. Says, just got back from a trip to Greenwood. Looked up to see if there was a service tonight. Saw the calendar said family camp. Keep up the good work. Well, Patrick, if you're in Greenwood, Indiana, if you're around tomorrow morning, come to St. Mary of Egypt. We'd love to have you. Are you a fellow Hoosier? Anyways, we got a little boomer tech problems, it looks like. It's all good. I'm sure the Collins brothers will be right back. Oh, Patrick's in Southern Indiana. Nice. Very nice. Well, if you're around Greenwood, do come to service tomorrow. We'd love to have you. So, guys, smash that like. I know the Collins brothers, they'll be back in just a minute, I hope. Surely nothing major happened. But you know how the powers that be, the demons, they seem to always act up regarding certain topics. They were unplugged. Alan Antonio. Yeah, something like that. Do they always? Hopefully we get it worked out. Hopefully we're able to get through the stream. I thought their video quality was better. I thought maybe they updated their internet, but let's just hold on for a second. I know they'll be back. Let me just check the X. The Goy beam. Yeah, they got us. The Galians. Yeah, do you guys see the new Disclosure Day movie that's going to be coming out? I'm really excited to get there because we really didn't talk about any of these topics backstage. We were more just catching up. And I do want to say, if you guys have never read this tome of a book called Invoking the Beyond by the Collins brothers, Paul and Phillip, highly, highly recommend. Very well researched. E.T. got him. Yeah, E.T. phone home. Hey, there's my wife in the chat. Shout out to Jenny. Come on. You guys, let me message them on X. You guys able to come back? I don't know. Of course, it happens right when you start the stream. Right when you start the stream and start to get into things, something like this happens. So we'll just hang out for a second. I just messaged him on X. What are you guys up to this Saturday night? I usually don't stream this late. This is kind of a unusual time for Church of the Eternal Logos. Reading out a message while typing is so boomer coded. Seems like a low tier for being boomer coded myself. Disclose. Oh, here they are.
Here we are.
So here we go.
Okay, golly.
Anyway,
Okay,
sorry. Yeah, with Roswell, 1947, there was also some other sightings back then that were significant at the time, and where they were seen. I believe there were UFOs seen over Mount Rainier that took place at almost the same time. With Roswell and with those first initial sightings and major UFO case studies, what would become major UFO case studies, we had what has been referred to as the government cover-up ploy phase of the psychological operation. In other words, many of these incidents were used basically to convince the public that the government was hiding an alien reality from humanity.
Yeah, and in case you lost us when Paul was expositing all this, that phase is written about by the perennialist Charles Upton.
Yeah, in his book, Cracks in the Great Wall, Vectors of the Counter Initiation. I believe the book is called The Disclosure Deception and System of Antichrist. All those books, he covers this in some detail. And but if you look at Roswell, the initial story that's put out by involving the through the 509th bombing squad, which is kind of this intelligence. It was an intelligence circle that still is involved in the UFO deception to this very day. What they did is they initially put out a stories that would lead people to believe, that gave them the impression that something otherworldly there had crashed. Then they quickly retracted that story, and they began to intimidate witnesses and threaten witnesses. And this was in order to create the impression that the government was hiding something so gigantic, so massive surrounding the UFO phenomenon, that they would do anything, they'd go to any lengths to cover it back up, including threatening people, including intimidation tactics, all of that. And it basically created the idea among people that these things had to be from another world. Another example of this would be another example of the cover-up ploy being employed by would be the Men in Black.
Right.
Many contactees claim to have been visited by these Men in Black, and these incidents where they saw something in the sky, or or some kind of unusual encounter with an aerial phenomenon, with these incidents that they would have probably have let go of, they probably would have dismissed, they were all of a sudden made of great significance to them, because here's somebody, either claiming to be from the government or claiming to be from some kind of dark cabal, visiting their house, acting in all sorts of menacing ways, acting strange, and in very idiosyncratic ways, and all, and it convinced them, these people, that the government was trying to cover up an alien reality.
Yeah. So essentially, it was just one. It was one enormous campaign of pseudo obscurantism.
Yeah.
In order to convince people that there was, in fact, something being hidden, and that by the United States government, and that would involve interstellar or interplanetary visitors.
Yeah, but if you looked at like both of those cases, whether it be the Men in Black or you looked at Roswell, and you looked at them with the through discerning eyes and looked at them closer, you could see actually like deep state political actors behind the whole thing. With Roswell, for instance, Bill Corso came out with his book the day after Roswell,
Right.
and they made a big to-do about his connections with the National Security Council, his connections with Dwight Eisenhower. He must be telling us the truth, and the day after Roswell, asserted that this was alien technology, and that the technology that they were able to that they were able to take away from this crash that basically created our modern world. It gave us fiber optics, it gave us lasers, it gave us microwaves, on and on it goes. However, if you go back and read the beginning of the book, Corso states that he brought in two scientists to look at the debris. The scientists were Erman Oberth and Werner von Braun, two Nazi paperclip scientists. And the reason he says that he brought them in is because, paraphrasing loosely what he says, it replicated a technology we seen among the Nazis and all. If this was alien technology, a Nazi couldn't tell you anything about it.
Right.
If this was technology that had, that the Nazis had come up with, if this was propulsion systems that they had developed, or ships that they had themselves deployed, then it makes all the sense in the world bringing in Werner von Braun.
Right. Why would a gray from Zeta Reticuli be replicating German technology?
Yeah.
It doesn't make much sense.
I mean, the Volkswagen is a very impressive piece of automotive technology, but I don't think that a gray from planet Mortax or wherever it needs the German technology. That I'm pretty sure they'd have the propulsion system that would render anything that Germany could cook up very unimpressive.
But Werner von Braun, once you read his name there, it sends up all sorts of alarm bells, because he was heading up the rocket program for the Germans at Peenemünde. He and General Dornberger, where they were running through like 100 some slave labor, prisoners of war, and that's working them to death, creating the V1 and V2 rockets, manufacturing those. So instantly you're like, wait a minute, roll back the tape here, rewind the VCR, and you're like, you're trying to tell me this is alien, but then you're bringing in these German scientists. It's more likely what we're dealing with is a German technology, the product of Nazi R&D, and all. So and then with the other case with the Men in Black, people are convinced by these encounters with the Men in Black that we're dealing with some kind of otherworldly phenomenon here, and the United States government is going to all sorts of lengths to cover it up. But what many people don't realize, when you dig into the Men in Black cases a little bit deeper, you find out things like Jim Keith's. You find out about Jim Keith's interview with Jim Moseley from Saucer Spear magazine, and what Jim Moseley had found out was that many of these Men in Black incidents were actually being orchestrated by NICAP, the major UFO investigatory body, one of the very first. And Jim Moseley told Jim Keith that he believed that NICAP was just doing this so that they could scoop other, journalists or beat other investigatory bodies to the punch, so they would go in there and intimidate, these contactees or these witnesses of strange lights in the sky and say, "Oh, don't you talk to anybody," and
Right.
that's why they were doing it. What Moseley didn't realize was that most of the founding members, Joseph Bryan, Nicholas de Rochefort, somebody that I'll be talking about again tonight, Nicholas de
Yes.
Rochefort, very important individual. These guys were Central Intelligence Agency. They were all, many of the founding members of NICAP were from the Central Intelligence Agency. They were CIA, and somebody who has written extensively about that is Jack Brewer. He's written a whole book about that called Fortunate Sons, which goes into the genesis of NICAP and basically shows that it was either infiltrated or it was just a CIA front from the very beginning, and all.
Right.
So placing those men in black incidents in the context of Moseley's revelations, placing it in that context actually puts the whole thing in a whole different light. I mean, instead of NICAP trying to scoop other journalists, when it came to an incident or a story, or trying to beat other investigators to the punch, instead of that, it more so looks like a CIA psychological operation to convince people that whatever they had seen was so significant and so it was so earth-shattering that the United States government was going to do anything to cover it up, including sending strange men dressed in all black to their house, acting in all sorts of menacing ways, engaging in all sorts of intimidation tactics. So that's the first part of the psychological operation. These circles, these covert political circles that have been behind the UFO deception, seem to have moved on to a new phase, and that new phase is the disclosure phase of the psychological operation. And in this phase, the United States government, or portions of the United States government, because it ain't an act of Congress, it's certainly not the representative side of our government by any stretch of the imagination, but a portion of the darker side of government, the deep state, whatever, feigns capitulation. They run up the white flag. Okay, you've finally gotten us to admit it. Our secret is out. Yes, there are aliens, and they start trotting out these quote unquote whistleblowers. They trot out David Grush. They trot out Louis Elizondo, Eric Davis, Jay Stratton, the whole crowd. And this crowd claims to start giving us the straight skinny on the UFO phenomenon. But you'll notice that the one thing that's lacking is any evidence. It's just they give us wild stories. There's some wild tales involved, but then you want the accompanying evidence. And Davis Grush says I'd like to move to a SCIF, a secret compartmentalized information facility, to discuss this part.
And he was really big in the news like 2 years ago when he had that hearing in front of Congress and was talking about aliens and UFOs and some of his research. But when you're talking about this as a psyop, I mean, it looks like explicitly a psychological operation through gaslighting, where the government tells you one thing, then it rescinds it, it tells you it's not real, but then we see all these connections between the government and, you know, all these Hollywood films promoting, whether it be Independence Day or ET, or, you know, the list goes on, even today with the new one coming out, Disclosure Day, where the government seems to bolster the people who want to believe in the legitimacy of aliens and UFOs. But at least for a while, or even before Trump or Obama, the government then shooed that stuff away. It's conspiracy theory, you know, it's not real, which kind of breaks the brain of the average American to make them more susceptible to a psychological operation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It builds it creates a higher level of suggestibility in the population.
It's kind of a variation of the pincer movement, because you have ostensibly pressure from above, you know, in this case, pseudo cover-up efforts, pseudo recovery operations.
The public wouldn't buy it if they didn't see some kind of resistance.
And then
so they feign a little bit of resistance, and then they cave.
Yeah,
you know, it's the Rock's turn to get pinned in Stone Cold.
right.
And all, you know, and that convinces people that there is an actual kind of that there's some kind of actual conflict between a control, conceal, secrecy group and a group of, you know, tell-all whistleblower group, that there's some kind of actual fight or struggle going on there between the two, when the truth is that, you know, that they're all on the kind of, this is a simplistic way of putting it, they're all kind of, they're on the same side. And all. David Grush, for instance. Okay, we've been doing a series at Canadian Patriot Review and at the Decoding Culture Foundation site called Deception Through Disclosure. It's not the same as Charles Upton's book, The Deception Disclosure, but it's, you know, it's same words and all. And in the first installment, we go a little bit into David Grush, not into particularly his background, but into the background of the people who are representing him. And he puts himself out there as, you know, fighting the intelligence community and trying to squeeze the truth out of the intelligence community. But when you look at his legal representation, he is represented by the intelligence community. Compass Rose Law Firm was started by Andrew Picard, who is former CIA. He wants people to believe that he got out of the CIA because he was trying to tell the truth, that he was trying to do some whistleblowing there, and that he got pressed out. If you look at his story a little bit more, it sounds just more like he was on the raw end of internecine fighting. But he still has his connections there and all. The lawyer from Compass Rose that actually represented David Grush was the inspector general to the intelligence community. And so, you know, here's Grush trying to say, I'm turning against I'm going rogue. I'm off the reservation, guys. And all, trust me. And yet he's being represented by these people. And what should concern people, should concern people about the Compass Rose representation there, is that they also provided representation to Eric Ciamella. I'm trying to CIA. Malla. I believe that's it. But it was the first whistleblower in the first impeachment. He was the first whistleblower in the first impeachment attempt against Donald Trump during his first administration. Ciaramella got tongue-tied there. Ciaramella was the one that claimed that he had received damning information concerning a conversation between Zelensky and Trump, that Trump was basically promising some kind of financial aid if they would open investigations into the Biden family. And And in truth, it was all hearsay. Chiaramella was getting his information about this from a major deep state actor. His name escapes me at the moment, but he was one of the Ukrainian twins. But anyways, the guy was lying because he had basically done a summary of the conversation that took place between Zelensky and Trump, and that summary totally contradicted with what the transcript said, what the transcript, the actual transcript of the phone call was, of what took place during the phone call, and so it ended up all being a lie, and this was an attempt basically to override the will of the American people, because it was trying to get rid of a president who had won, the vote, and so it was trying to overturn democracy by trying to look like it was preserving democracy and all, and so and Compass Rose was involved in this, this attempt to override or overthrow representative government. So it begs the question: is there representation of this UFO whistleblower? Just another attempt to subvert the democratic institutions that we cherish here in the United States. So.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and what do you think their goal? I mean, ultimately, I view the UFO alien psyop phenomenon as obviously in spiritual terms. I think it's a way to diminish belief in God and a transcendence. It's trying to really make you associate some type of space being as your ultimate savior, as somebody who's going to rescue humanity from nuclear warfare or whatever it may be. And also, in a way, usher in a form of technocracy.
Absolutely.
What do you guys think their ultimate, what is the goal of the UFO psyop?
Absolutely. So, taking us back to, we began our examination within the chronological vicinity of Roswell.
Mhm.
We also have in the summer and fall of 1947 the great wave of UFO sightings,
Right.
and that coincided with the discovery of the Nag Hammadi codices, the Nag Hammadi Gospels.
Mhm.
And this little instance of synchronicity, the coinciding of the Nag Hammadi codices discovery and the great wave of UFO sightings, is cited by a Gnostic revivalist by the name of John Lash as being a portent of things to come. It foreshadows the emergence of a Gnostically inspired religion that will supplant Christianity.
Right.
And the hallmarks of this Gnostically inspired religion would be a veneration for the goddess Sophia, and an anthropocentric soteriology, self-salvation.
Right.
But the famous psychoanalyst Carl Jung played a major role in the popularization of the Gnostic codices. Jung was fascinated by UFOs, and he characterized the phenomenon as a living myth. He contended that the very shape of flying saucers provided a visual correlative for the infinite circle to which Nicholas of Cusa likened God. And so on the antique level, UFOs, according to Jung, could be easily conceived of as God. But Jung also had intelligence ties. He
shared a mistress. There was a mistress between him and Alan Dulles.
Oh,
And I believe that he also provided, he also was the psychologist to Clover Dulles, Dulles's wife. And Dulles Leon Davis, who was the scientist with the Manhattan Project, one of the scientists on the Manhattan Project, asserted that Alan Dulles had basically created much of the UFO myth by using Carl Jung as a source of inspiration, and his accusations of Dulles actually brought a lot of firestorm down on Leon Davidson, because there were actual meetings between the Air Force and the CIA where they were suggesting that Davidson was somehow a security risk, or that he was somehow an agent of a foreign power, and that he should be surveilled and probably investigated as a possible traitor. So he wasn't too far off the mark with what he had said. Yeah.
But as I pointed out earlier, Carl Jung played a major role in the popularization of the Nag Hammadi codices, the Gnostic Gospels, and what you see with the popularization of these codices in tandem with the UFO phenomena is an attempt to promote a new spirituality which is derivative of Gnosticism.
Right.
And this is the dominant hermeneutic according to which the UFO phenomenon is understood. When we speak of UFOs, when we speak of ufology, it is typically framed within or understood within the hermeneutic, the inverted hermeneutic of Gnosticism. And this began in the promulgation of this odd neo-Gnostic narrative began during the 18th century Enlightenment with a man by the name of Jacob E. Levy. I've mentioned him ad nauseum. Jacob E. Levy, the Enlightenment era printer and pamphleteer. He promulgated this latter-day interplanetary Gnosticism in works like The Oration Spoke at Joiner's Hall, The Layman's Vindication of the Christian Religion. But basically what he did was, in Vogelian terms, alluding to Eric Vogelin, he amenitized the eschaton. He transposed the eschaton, the end of days, heaven, hell, angels, demons, God. He transposed all of the transcendent into the immanent. He collapsed it into the immanent, so that the vacuum separating celestial bodies, that which we call space, became the eschaton. And Levy basically he basically asserted that Earth was hell, and that there was no new order of beings that was created to populate Earth. So our very occupancy of Earth is something of an accident. It's a very dysteleological view of things. It's a very dysteleological view of the cosmos. It's all accidental. It's all it's bereft of purpose, bereft of meaning. But this demonic portrayal of the world was derivative of ancient Gnosticism, and Gnostic cosmology, which held a docetistic valuation of all materiality and of the cosmos. It's an anti-cosmic belief system. The Gnostics assigned a positive ontological status to evil. For the Gnostics, in contradistinction to the Church Fathers, in contradistinction to the patristic consensus, the Gnostics understood evil in terms of ontology, not in terms of moral orientation. So evil was viewed not as a tendency of the will, not something from within, but as an actual animated essence that is interwoven into the very ontology of creation itself. And so this world, this planet is an accident. The cosmos is an accident. It's created by an ignorant and corrupt demiurge, which they regard as the biblical God. But you see elements of that in Alevi's latter-day interplanetary Gnosticism. Alevi holds that our occupancy of Earth is entirely accidental, and in fact, physical embodiment is accidental as well. He regards the physical body as a corporeal penitentiary, and in order to escape that penitentiary and to transcend bodily confinement and the penal colony of the cosmos, we have to undergo this purgatorial trial. And upon completion of that purgatorial trial, we ascend to other planets, which are these heavenly habitations supporting other life forms. And to basically support that contention scientifically, he cited the work of a Royal Society member by the name of William Durham. In turn, he believed that a Dutch astronomer, Christian Huygens, had actually viewed humanoid life forms actually scurrying along the surfaces of other planets that he viewed through this massive telescope. And he also, in the great tradition of Gnosticism, assuming the inverted hermeneutic, he also reinterpreted the Gospel of St. John, chapter 14, verse 2, wherein Jesus states, in my Father's house are many mansions. Well, were the many mansions to Alevi? The many mansions were actually other worlds, other worlds and other galaxies and what have you. And you see this, you see this latter-day interplanetary Gnosticism reiterated ad nauseum in various forms. For instance, L. Ron Hubbard's Scientology, his account of human origins, it's reminiscent of that latter-day interplanetary Gnosticism.
Right.
Humans are actually alien beings called thetans. Man's present condition of physical embodiment is just a consequence of his exile to Earth. We're not meant to be here. Again, we are just accidental occupants. We were exiled to Earth 75 million years ago by this despot named Xenu. Once we grasp this gnosis, this secret knowledge, because that's a centerpiece of the Gnostic heresy is gnosis, is secret knowledge. Once this gnosis is grasped, then we can commence this process known as auditing, and we can repair the internal damage that's been induced by our indwelling thetans, and we can eventually ascend. And
Right.
Hubbard basically portrays man as an embodied alien whose archonic bondage has to be overcome through secret knowledge. Another case in point would be Mormonism. And Mormonism,
Yes, I was immediately thinking about that.
Yep. Mormonism, we have we're all basically amnestic gods, divine amnesiacs. We just simply don't recall that we are divine. And this kind of amnestic divinity. You see it promoted by Feuerbach and what have you, who would also influence Karl Marx and on it goes. And Karl Marx, of course, he'll play a role in the creation of the Soviet Union in the Bolshevik Revolution. And what is one of the antecedents of the Bolshevik Revolution? Cosmism, this religion that just distorts Orthodox Christianity. Absolutely, the cosmists. And the cosmists they like Jacob
and I don't want to get too off field, but actually Werner von Braun was a cosmist, and he held
interesting.
Yeah, he held
No, publicly he claimed like a evangelical Protestant Christianity or something.
Yeah, and it got incorporated into. I mean, like his head was basically a syncretic pot.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
But he did. He believed a lot of the belief. He believed a lot of the things that were espoused by those cosmists.
Right, and another interesting, and this will tie us back into the intelligence community. Another person who basically regurgitated Jacob B. Levy's latter-day interplanetary Gnosticism was none other than Jim Jones.
Yeah,
Jim Jones held that the world, the cosmos was populated by these socialist paradises on other off-worldly habitations.
Yeah, and that. Yeah, he was basically a deep state actor. It's the more and more the evidence is seeming to suggest that. If you listen to the death tape, the tape that is being played right when the so-called suicides are about ready to begin, they're about ready to begin. If you listen to that tape, he says, "Get Dwyer out of here." Richard Dwyer was a major mover and shaker at the embassy there in Guyana, and was believed by many to be a CIA, basically a CIA operative working under some kind of embassy kind of cover. And and he never, whenever he was asked, if he was CIA, he never would answer the question.
Right.
And all, and it's like, why did Jones want Dwyer to get out of there? Why did he get him out of here? If you look at Brazilian newspapers, all of his neighbors when he was in Brazil thought that Jim Jones was working for the CIA. He was driving around in black government vehicles and the like, and on it goes. You could just go down the list with Jones of all these different connections. To, Harvey Milk, just the government there in California. I mean, he was really plugged in. The strange ties between the People's Temple and SLA, which was, basically started by Donald DeFreeze, who seems to have been a mind control subject, Dr. Westbrook. And but everybody that you just named, I mean, the Scientologist, he was uncovered, comes out of naval intelligence. The Mormons are, the stories are legendary about how the CIA and the FBI go to the Mormons because they're good old boys, patriots, and really know their archival work, really know how to do the archival work really well and stuff. Go to them to get, as for their recruitment,
And speaking of that spiritual trajectory, you're talking about the Nag Hammadi and the Gnosticism that underpins a lot of this UFO alien discussion is from Levy to L. Ron Hubbard. You can't help but think of how theosophy influenced with this concept of ascended masters, secret knowledge, and then of course Crowley with his encounter with Iowas, who he claims dictates the book of the law, where it looks very much like modern depictions of alien grays, and it's clearly some demon he conjured and has contact with. And that's why, at least from me, and I think many Christians now are coming to the perspective that this is really just a front for demonic activity.
Yeah. Right. The Theosophist, I believe, even going back to Blavatsky, they have long held, and then the lady that followed Blavatsky afterwards, Alice Bailey. You find this in her writings, or writings of the people associated with her, have long held that the Vatican was holding secrets regarding aliens. And what do you see Luis Elizondo now saying? He says it on The Age of Disclosure. He says it in his book. And the Vatican has very extensive files on all of this, and it's
basically a New Age trope.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But this prompts us to ask the question, why Gnosticism? Why is ufology so deeply tinctured by Gnosticism, and why promote Gnosticism? Well, I'll give you as abridged an explanation as I possibly can. So, okay, with Jacob Alevi's neo-Gnostic narrative, we see this angelic motif. You know, that man is an apostate angel who will ascend to other worlds. That angelic motif has been repeatedly conveyed in films, TV shows, sci-fi literature, and invariably in these science fiction pop culture artifacts, the aliens assume one of two roles that are dialectically related. There are angels and there are demons, which are essentially apostate angels. And the relationship between these two is dialectical, because while they occupy the extreme polarities of a Manichaean binary of good and evil, which are viewed as co-equal. The difference between the Manichaean view of good and evil is that the ontology of Manichaeanism follows from the conviction that good and evil are somehow co-equal.
Right.
Whereas with Orthodox Christianity, we view evil as a privation. It exists only in negation. It's a negation of being.
Right.
It doesn't possess a positive ontological status. But the angels and demons, or you know, the heroic aliens or the villainous aliens, while they occupy these extreme polarities in this Manichaean binary, the revelation of their existence always, invariably, and you see it in all the films and all the books, invariably portends the same existential consequences. If the aliens are angelic, then the nation-state system is woefully suboptimal for the purposes of establishing interplanetary diplomacy. If the aliens are demonic, then only the collective military might of a unipolar world can withstand the extraterrestrial invaders. So we have the amalgamation of sovereign nation states into a technocratic superstate, and the apotheosis of humanity being depicted as an inescapable and desirable outcome. As a matter of fact, in Gnostic soteriology, and we just saw this with Stephen Colbert on one of the late night talk shows. He was asked what he thought the afterlife was, and the answer he gave,
supposed Catholic.
Yes, the answer he gave is very, very
supposed comedian.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
But the answer he gave deviates radically even from the Augustinian Christianity of Catholicism. He says, well, we kind of are absorbed back into this vast ocean of consciousness. This is vintage Gnosticism. This is what the Gnostics viewed as salvific, was to be reabsorbed into what is known as the pleroma, or this singular deific power, the true divinity,
realm of pure light.
Yes, absolutely transmundane. It is completely and totally divorced, ontologically divorced from the physical universe, from the cosmos. You know, ergo, it is pure, it is uncorrupted, it is unsullied by disgusting, grotesque matter in the view of the Gnostics.
Right.
What happens though when this belief is ideologized, when it assumes an amanatizing form, as most Gnosticism did with the 20th century? Gnosticism assumed an amanatizing form with the various socio-political utopian movements like Marxism, Hitlerian fascism, liberal democracy, all of the Gnostic political religions that Eric Voegelin talks about in the New Science of Politics. What happens to the pleroma in this new amanatizing form of Gnosticism? It is ideologized and concretized in the form of what? The state. And the individual is subordinated to the state. Ergo, we have the political religion of collectivism. That is
Right.
why it is so fortuitous. It is politically and socially expedient to promote these Gnostic beliefs. And we are, the West is especially awash in them, and ufology is awash in them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes, go ahead.
Oh no,
What were
I
you gonna
just
say?
wanted to point out one more thing because while we're on this,
Mhm.
this string, about how it's being used, how how the UFO deception, one of its goals is the undermining of rightly ordered religion,
Right.
and the attack that seems to be going on right now, it seems to be a manifestation of what has been called doctrinal warfare. And we talk about doctrinal warfare in our book, Invoking the Beyond. In the seventh installment that we're still working on, for the Deception Through Disclosure series. In the seventh installment, we're going to be talking about doctrinal warfare again. Doctrinal warfare i- is basically the attacking the enemy without using a standing army, without any kind of kinetic warfare, but going after his ideology,
Mhm.
going after his chiefly his spiritual roots.
The worldview.
Yeah, his worldview, and trying to revise and modify that worldview. And there is actually a a nexus point, an intersection where UFO deception meets with doctrinal warfare. One of the major players in doctrinal warfare was an American minister named Dr. Charles W. Lowry. And David Wimhoff has spoken about him in his book, I believe the book American Proposition, which is about how doctrinal warfare was unleashed on the Catholic Church, in particular the American Catholic Church. And he was a major mover with the central, working with, collaborating with the Central Intelligence Agency and the Nixon administration. But Lowry, he headed up a movement and to basically get June 17th enshrined as what he called Freedom Day.
Mm.
And Freedom Day June 17th eventually did become Freedom Day, and it was held in Berlin, New Hampshire. I believe the year was 1954 when this occurred. And what Freedom Day was basically a psychological operation against the communist, and it was supposed to whip up anti-communist fervor by celebrating when the East Germans and their rebellion against communism. But um, uh, Lowry's collaborator on Freedom Day, on this Freedom Day project, was none other than Nicholas de Rochefort, one of those founding members that I mentioned all the way at the
Mhm.
beginning. One of the founding members of NICAP, which was a major UFO investigatory body, one of the first. And he wrote the Rochefort and Lowry worked together on this Freedom Day project. It was regarded to be a resounding success, especially by Charles J. Kirsten. Charles J. Kirsten was a representative at that time who had a lot of ties to deep state circles. I'll say deep state circles with a more right of center orientation.
Mm.
And Kirsten, I believe he got it was. I believe that he it was in Congress. It was on the floor of Congress. He praised their efforts and he praised Freedom Day, and he suggested that during his talk over Freedom Day, or during his praise of Freedom Day, he suggested that a private organization should be created for the purposes of whipping up psychological operations like Freedom Day. And what Jack Brewer, the UFO researcher Jack Brewer, has noted was that some 27 months after Kirsten gave his speech made the suggestion, gave his speech over Freedom Day and made his suggestions regarding a private organization, that 27 months later, all of a sudden, NICAP emerges with Nicholas de Rochefort, Joseph Bryan, and several other former CIA officials, spearheading the founding of NICAP. So what we see, with this latest, this latest round of disclosures and the like, and this recent meeting that supposedly took place, that Perry Stone, the American evangelical, was talking about, this meeting between American pastors and members of the government regarding disclosure, and get your flocks ready. All this is long way around Harvey's barn. All this is a manifestation of doctrinal warfare, and that meeting, I believe, is a manifestation of doctrinal warfare, telling them to get your flocks ready, get them ready for what? What's implicit is you're going to hear a lot of things in the days to come regarding UFOs that are going to undermine your faith.
Right. Apart from the fact that, like, Perry Stone and many of these televangelists have a considerable reach in terms of their audiences, and so clearly,
well, that's one of the reasons, right? You got a large audience, so you would put this out through him.
Exactly. That's who you'd want to market it.
He wasn't at the meeting, but like other major televangelists were, and they told him about this. So you got people that, like, they fit they know how to sell the package to the consumer, because it's basically televangelism is the consumerist model applied to Christianity. But also, why also is it good? Would it be advantageous to exploit these televangelists? At the risk of being insulting, bad theology. You're not talking about some apostolically based communion. You're not talking about the Orthodox or the Catholics or the Anglicans and all. You're talking about people that are just one tier above the Nala Ray School of Divinity. It's a very superficial understanding of the gospel.
Well, and also
they're not going to look at it, through the eyes of the church fathers, or theologians that are apostolically based, that are able to say look at the phenomenon on one side, and then look at all the examples of diabolical activity on the look at how they sync up.
Notice
the parallels.
Right.
They're not going to be able to really do that in a meaningful way that helps them connect the dots.
No. You got Paula White as the face of evangelical, really all of Christianity right now in America, in the office that she was appointed to in the White House.
Right. And Paula White and her ilk, Pastor John Hagee. Oh my God. These people are, for all practical purposes, are either closely aligned with or are what's known as dominionist. and they subscribe to dominion theology, and those are pejoratives that were coined by a sociologist by the name of Sarah Diamond in 1989 to apply to Christians who were seeking political and cultural hegemony. Now, the dominionism as a pejorative it's been applied with a troubling degree of elasticity, but there are legitimate cases where you could basically identify dominionism.
Yeah, the left of center dude would even attack somebody that makes an argument for the social kingship of Christ, but
right.
we're not.
We're not talking about Christian nationalism here.
We're talking about people that basically want to set up a kind of theocracy on par with Old Testament Israel.
Right. Well, the dominionist believes that subjugating the institutions of government, media, entertainment, business, and education is all mandated by sacred scripture.
Yeah, Jesus isn't going to come back unless we do it. He's either unable to, or he's not willing to, unless we do it.
But the dominionists, they reinterpret biblical dominion, which is responsible stewardship of the created order. According to Orthodox Christianity, we view man as creation's priest, and he offers it back up to God. That is the dominion we have. We are given this. We are given earth as a lovely cosmic bequest by God, and we give it back to God. Okay, but they view stewardship of the created order. They view it as political dominion. It's the dominionist eschatological hope that a successful political coup will induce the parousia. It's human action within history that will compel Jesus to return. So Christ is either unwilling to or incapable of returning to earth until Christians establish the kingdom of God for him through the seizure of social and governmental institutions. So the eschaton, the end of days, once again, indwells history, and political activism becomes soteriological in character. It becomes salvific. And you see this transposition of the eschaton. It was presaged by, ironically enough, certain neo-Gnostic theoreticians whose systems would spawn virulently anti-theistic political movements. For instance, Joachim of Fiore, he apocalypticized history by configuring it according to his bizarre Trinitarian eschatology. You had the pre-Christian era, the age of the Father, you had who represented the Old Testament, the age of the Son, who represented the New Testament, a kind of almost Marcionite bifurcation between the two. And then the third apocalyptic era was the age of the Holy Spirit. And of course, Joachim is the self-proclaimed prophet of that era. But in that era, in that third stage, what do we see happen? We see apart from the withering away of the state in almost a Marxian sense to a free communist world, we see man divesting himself of physical embodiment. Man divests himself of the flesh and enters into disembodied bliss.
He does away with the priesthood. He does away with the sacraments.
Yeah,
it's basically a proto-Protestantism.
Exactly. After Joachim, you have the 17th century German cobbler Jacob Boehme, who inspired the mystical English communist Gerard Winstanley. And again, taking a page from Marcion, Boehme advanced this bifurcated conception of God to reflect what he perceived as two contrary, natures, two irreconcilable natures. So the God of the Old Testament was wrath. The God of the New Testament was love. And these two natures were just mirrors of human consciousness, which, by the way, you see elements of this in Swedenborgianism, which was, of course, founded by Emanuel Swedenborg. We actually went to a Swedenborgian college.
Urbana University.
Is
that the one in Pennsylvania?
It's in Ohio.
Ohio.
We went there. And we didn't know anything about Swedenborgianism, and we found out. Well, hey, Helen Keller was a Swedenborgian. So was Johnny Appleseed, And
I didn't know Johnny Appleseed was Swedenborgian.
Johnny Appleseed was a Swedenborgian, and Swedenborg also psychologized Christianity and emanetized all the articles of faith comprising Christianity, and basically relocated it into the psyche,
Right.
just like this fellow. And Swedenborg also held some exotheological beliefs. He held a belief system concerning off-world habitations and extraterrestrial life that was derivative of a Levy once more. But you see with Burma, you see with him, he basically gives way to this idealistic Gnosticism,
Right.
which becomes the prism through which the modern revolutionary will view the world, from the revolutionary vantage point, which is essentially a kind of an ideologized docetism. Utopia is actuated through the dialectical process of history. So, and the revolutionary participates in the collision of binary oppositions that catalyzes the dialectic of history. And finally, this process presumably will redeem the world. Well, all of these emanetizing forms of Gnosticism, which I think more or less crescendo with George Friedrich Hegel, who will be later on co-opted by Karl Marx in the formulation of dialectical materialism. All of these emanetizing forms of Gnosticism and these emanetist eschatologies, the dominionist eschatology almost mirrors them, and that is a result of that's a result of we see for instance, we see with dispensationalism, we see what which is of course just rampant in the evangelical communities. We see with
and it's part and parcel of the whole dominionist.
And part of the dominionist scheme.
Because like the dominionists, they kind of quibble among themselves. Well, is the rapture pre-trib, mid-trib, or at the end of the trib, at the end of the tribulation, and all? And the one thing they all can agree on, whether or not it's pre-trib, mid-trib, end of the tribulation, and all, we need to stock up on our guns and ammo.
Well, dispensationalism, you see, what does dispensationalists do? Exactly what Joachim of Fior did. They segment history into separate prophetic eras that precede the eschaton. And these prophetic ages are called dispensations. This is from whence comes the elaborate flow charts that are accompanied by apocalyptic imagery inspired by the books of Daniel and Revelation. You've seen them thrown up on the screen during some of John Hagee's sermons. When we reflect on the theoreticians that we've just surveyed, from Joachim of Fior, Jacob Burma, to George Friedrich Hegel, we see that dispensationalism exhibits the same modern Gnostic tendency to situate the eschaton within history. We also identified the same Gnostic preoccupation with calendrics, as is evidenced by the dispensationalists' failed attempt to predict the end of the world. And this is why they are predisposed to now a new emanetist eschatology, one that involves extraterrestrials, one that was presaged by the latter-day interplanetary Gnosticism of Jacob Levy.
But the irony. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna go ahead and finish up. I had a handful of questions that I was gonna redirect the conversation towards, but go ahead, finish whatever thought you had. This is fantastic, so I don't want to cut you off.
Well, the irony is that with the dominionist / dispensationalist, they actually have more in common with the Satanists that they claim to oppose. And the reason that is, Okay, I've always wondered. I've wondered about this question for years. We used to work with Michael Corbin. He was down south of here in Colorado, nationally syndicated talk show host, and Mike did a wonderful job. And one of the people that he had on his show was R. Roy Blake. And R. Roy Blake had written a book about satanic circles within the military intelligence. It was called Objective Evil, which is damn near impossible to get anymore. You can't find it anywhere. That's how suppressed it's been and all. But R. Roy Blake on Michael's show had said, there seems to be this kind of strange relationship between the evangelicals and the Satanists. Like he says, many former Satanists become evangelicals, and then you hear about evangelical pastors or televangelists being secret Satanists, and
Yep.
So I always wondered about that, and I looked into this symbiosis to try to find out why this is the case. Well, there is a Dublin import in America, basically an English import in America, known as the Plymouth Brethren.
Oh, mhm.
The Plymouth Brethren was an extremely Gnostic sect. I mean, they didn't refer to, they had a doctrine called nuda scriptura, the naked scripture and all. You
Right.
look at it, top to bottom, it's Gnostic. It's
Right.
Gnostic. Who were two people that the Plymouth Brethren gave us? One was John Nelson Darby, the
Right.
other was Aleister Crowley. And
Right.
Crowley even admitted that he still had an attraction to their eschatology even after he left the group.
Right.
And you can tell that with his particular brand of Satanism and their particular apocalyptic views, that dispensationalism that we find with John Nelson Darby and the Schofield Bible is
Right.
incorporated into it. So
Yep.
they actually have a symbiosis between the two of them, and most of them don't even know that exists, that relationship is there.
Right.
So
That's
that's all
amazing.
I have to say.
No, I'm glad you added that. That's a fascinating connection.
Yeah.
I was wanting to ask you guys to get back to the current topic of UFOs, because we've kind of you guys did an excellent job laying down the underlying spiritual dimension and framework that actually all of this sits upon. When we began our conversation with Roswell, and we've been focusing very much on U.S. intelligence agencies and men in black and stuff like this. When and how did this stuff become a global phenomenon, and what was the role of Hollywood, be it from Spielberg's E.T., as we said, with Will Smith, Men in Black, Independence Day, and now you're getting crop circles in England, and I don't know how prevalent the UFO phenomenon is in places like China or India or Southeast Asia. I would imagine, based on the spirituality, it's probably fairly prevalent in places like India. But what is the sort of global perspective? And it makes sense given the history of all this UFO activity that the US and even Donald Trump, due to him wanting to be seen in fantastic terms, his own megalomania, that he wants to be the president to disclose UFOs, to officially tell the US that aliens are real. And the US is basically taking charge and leading the government effort on releasing or normalizing the ideas that these things exist. Can you speak a little bit to the connections between the US government, Hollywood, and then how this is a global phenomenon? It's not just the US.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the global phenomenon, that's partially attributable to the fact that almost every single industrialized nation has a deep state.
Yes.
Every nation that is modernized and has has gone through the process of developing its own unique form of practicing representative government, its own unique form of democracy. Almost every one of them have a deep state, and those deep states have engaged always in some kind of form of covert R&D. And so
Mhm.
that's one of the ways that the phenomena could
Is
have
it
been
U.S. technology?
in
Or
all.
is it just this is a global narrative that is useful by all the deep states to implement their secretive technology on the populace to manipulate them and convince them of, an alternative reality?
Well, I think that it's not even American technology is going. And if you want to if you want to thank an American scientist for doing such a great job on deceiving the public with their R&D, using this advanced R&D to to convince the American public that that they're space aliens. You're going to have to learn how to speak German.
No,
uh,
right, right.
because okay, the Germans, the Nazis, the Nazis after the war, um, some of their scientists were actually taken into Russian custody, Soviet
Right.
custody. Some of them were taken into American custody, but then there was an additional kind of extraterritorial state, a kind of virtual state of Nazis. And they went all over the place. They went into South and Central America,
Yeah. A
you know,
lot of in Argentina,
Argentina, yeah, big one,
Paraguay. Mhm.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You can find colonies down there where it's blonde hair, blue eyes, and they're speaking German. Colonia Dignidad in
Yeah.
Chile, which played a
Relatives of my wife live in an all German community in Paraguay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so because they it was an extraterritorial state and this and the this allowed the phenomena to move around because the Nazis would go everywhere and bring their R&D with them. So I
So
think
what, because there's a lot of people that believe that Tesla's, technology, teleforce or whatever is behind some of the US deep state secretive technology.
and
So
we know that Trump's uncle did in fact look at
yes, I
Tesla's
just covered that last night. And I was just posting about John G. Trump and how he's the one that shoo-shooed the whole idea that Tesla's was in negotiations with the British government, the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia was going to send him money for this tech. So the idea that there was nothing there is just ridiculous. And he dies the day before he's supposed to meet with Franklin Roosevelt to potentially sell it to the US, which makes you think they kind of set him up so that he'd get all his research together. And then, lo and behold, he just dies the day before.
Yeah, it's very curious, very curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I mean that plays into it. I mean, but I believe that it partially got universalized by this extraterritorial state being able to move around and bring their R&D with them. But another reason that it seems to be global is okay. Part of the deception is advanced R&D.
Right.
That's
Agreed.
beyond question. That's
Agreed.
beyond question.
Yep.
And that's why a lot of the deception is going to fall flat on its face because whenever they do pull some kind of false flag operation off,
Yeah. Project Bluebeam or something.
yeah, the propulsion systems, the weapons deployed,
It'll be discernibly terrestrial.
scientists outside those circles, it will say that is humans can replicate that is something that we can do. This is something human and all. So there's that advanced R&D side, but there's also another side that is seldom spoken about. There are deep state actors who are also what you would they're sorcerers. They're wizards. I don't know how else to put it. I would
Yeah.
trying to avoid sensationalism here, but
No.
if you look at people like John B. Alexander, if you look at Michael Aquino,
Yes.
if you look at Hal Puthoff,
Yep.
these guys were all involved in fringe kind of religious groups, occultism, thanatology, you name it,
Right.
And so, so there is a cross section of this deception. There's cross section of these deep state actors that are conjuring things.
Yes.
They
And
are,
that's my personal belief, just to reveal my cards. I believe a lot of this is a mask for demonic activity.
yeah,
From an Orthodox perspective, speaking of eschatology, I mean, that makes total sense that the mass people would begin to, in a sense, venerate these extraterrestrial, higher intelligent entities, which in reality are just demons.
and when
And David,
you're
go ahead.
yeah, and when you're doing it that way, when you're doing, I'm not going to profess to understand all the mechanics of it, but when you're doing that, you can be sitting somewhere in America, I guess in the depths of the Pentagon, meditating or pulling this conjuring, and doing some kind of ritual, engaging in some kind of ritual, and it can result in something strange appearing in the skies over the Amazonian rainforest.
Right.
Right.
So,
Well, if you look at modern science, at least in its Baconian formulation, Baconian science,
Mm-hmm.
morally, conceptually, metaphysically, it belongs to the same continuum as magic. It really does.
Yes.
You look at, for instance, Robert Boyle, who was one of the founders of the Royal Society, which
Yeah.
was arguably a Freemasonic institution in its inception.
Right. They just
Robert-
didn't speak about spiritual stuff, but they're all Masons.
and they didn't understand it as spiritual. What they understood it as, they didn't understand it as being these phenomena, any agencies beyond the visible sphere, any supra-sensible agencies. They didn't understand them as supernatural, or certainly not in the theological sense of the word transcendent. They understood them as merely preternatural, or
Right.
the occupants of more subtle tiers of the physical cosmos, and that's what science was doing. Science was tapping into these more potent aspects of the material cosmos, but
Right.
all of it, all these magical powers, or the view was a very morally ambiguous one, because they could be directed towards ends fair or foul.
Right.
And that you have that same sort of ambivalence in modern science. In its Baconian formulation, science is anything but a value neutral project. Instead, it's the method by which the role of the conditioner can be realized. You have an almost Manichaean bifurcation of humanity, and this you see this presaged in the work of C.S. Lewis. He talks about this as a society of conditioners and the conditioned.
Right.
And in the case of modern science, it's leveraged by the conditioners against the conditioned. So
Right.
political processes become alchemical processes.
Right. Well, in that conditioning, I think that's why Hollywood and mass media films have been so successful. And I mean, I would imagine you ask the average American, and they probably have openness to the idea of extraterrestrials and UFOs. Where I would say a more, especially Orthodox, but traditional Christians would be like, "Oh no, come on, that's demonic stuff. That's an entire different paradigm for any of that stuff to be true than what I believe in."
Yeah,
And
and then
I would,
there's a whole cross section within within governmental circles of people that are very pragmatic, so they don't recognize the danger, but they recognize the utility. They damn well recognize the utility.
that was the Baconian revolution, right? Was transitioning knowledge from propositions and syllogisms to utility.
Exactly.
Have you had an opportunity to read Robert Morrow's book Malachi Martin and the Shadows of the Vatican?
I have not.
Okay. In the shadows of
Highly
the
recommend.
yes, very
Okay.
much so. Okay. Well, we didn't know Malachi Martin. We did know Michael Corbin and Bill Kennedy. We were very close with them, and they knew Malachi Martin and all. And so I kind of take an interest in all things Malachi Martin. But in that book, Robert Morrow, who was a very close associate of Malachi Martin's, he recounts a story about when Martin was invited by a Roman Catholic aide to the Secretary of Defense at that time. I believe that the Secretary of Defense at that time was Dick Cheney. I believe it was. I believe it was before he was vice president. Um, he was contacted by this Roman Catholic aide to the Secretary of Defense and asked to come in and give his opinion on something at Fort Bragg to watch several demonstrations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to give his opinion of what it was that he was what it was that he was seeing. So Malachi Martin and Robert Morrow go to Fort Bragg and all, and remember what we said when we were on your show last time. Fort Bragg
Right.
is a major epicenter of deep state activity.
Absolutely.
And all.
Right.
And lo and behold, we said that, and then that book, The Fort Bragg Cartel, comes out.
Yes. Yep.
And basically, so anyways, they go, Robert Morrow and Malachi Martin go to and watch this demonstration at Fort Bragg. They bring in this woman, this very petite woman in uniform, named Carol, and they ask Carol to demonstrate extreme weight. So Carol just demonstrates extreme weight. Two big burly guys come up, try to lift Carol. They can't do it for the life of them. They ask Carol to demonstrate immovability. So Carol, kind of goes into this kind of like trance-like state, and all big burly guys run at her, try to tackle her and bounce off of her, and all. And then they ask Carol to demonstrate what they said was digital penetration without physical injury, and they bring in this solid wood block, kind of like a butcher's block, is how Robert Morrow described it, and like she penetrates with her little frail fingers this block. And so that Malachi Martin, they ask Malachi Martin, what does he think this is? He's like, it's demonic possession. He just, diagnosed it with unmoved, without any kind of showing any kind of emotion.
Yeah,
And
dispassionately.
and what Robert Morrow asked him, well, how did you know this woman was possessed? Well, Malachi Martin had seen the psychological training materials that were used for this, and it had been prepared by Michael Aquino. So these guys at Fort Bragg, these guys at Fort Bragg are, given this training material by a
High priest of the Temple of
high
Set.
priest of the Temple of Set, and all very vocal, outright Satanist, and getting on Oprah Winfrey and every other show, admitting to it and stuff. Long way around Harvey's barn. Going back to my original point, they're given this stuff by a Satanist. It should cause them some kind of pause. They should recognize the danger, but they don't recognize the danger. They're too pragmatic, so they recognize the utility. They're like, I don't know how the hell she's doing this stuff, but damn it, it works. Let's use it. and all. So, but
and there's elements of ufology in Michael Aquino's.
oh yeah,
and Michael-
Pantechnicon, the alien that supposedly speaks with them and the like, and yeah, it's all there. He even admitted that his friend John B. Alexander was engaged in deceiving the public at a message board. So
Right. So now, leading up to the recent quote unquote disclosure, the question I've been dying to ask you guys is, what is your ultimate thoughts? Because me, as not an expert as you guys are in this topic, it just seemed absolutely underwhelming. And to see the public fanfare that this is somehow proving the existence of aliens and technology, I mean, most of it was just a few lights on, again, grainy, low pixelated video. That what we were promised is 1080p HP videos of aliens walking around or something. We didn't get any of that. And I think the thing that caused most discussion was the star-like figure is like some type of depiction of, looked like an 8-pointed star of some sort. And people like Anna Polina, the congresswoman, was saying, oh, you need to go read the book of Enoch. You got to learn about the Watchers. You got to learn about the Nephilim.
Luis Elizondo saying the same thing. Luis
Exactly.
Elizondo saying the same damn thing. And the Nephilim doctrine, that basically cribs liberally from the book of Enoch, and all the whole Nephilim doctrine came out of the Plymouth Brethren and all. One of the first writers over it was a guy from the Plymouth Brethren, basically saying that aliens somehow had sex organs that were compatible with our women and created serpent seed. That
Well,
is
they seem to be proctologists too, because every encounter seems to do butt stuff.
yeah.
Invariably, and with this whole notion of alien human hybridization, of the alien human coupling. Jacques Vallée wrote about that, and he basically observed that you have with that the tacitly underpinning that belief system is the assertion that celestial blood somehow runs through certain individuals' veins. And so you have this myth of celestial bloodlines, of this ascended master race. And lo and behold, the late Professor John Mack, he had proposed that
who was financed by Lawrence Rockefeller, by the way.
Yeah, financed by Lawrence Rockefeller. John Mack, he had proposed that UFO abductees represented an entirely different genetic type, and as a result of human and alien interaction, and that they were a spiritually gifted race, a very special breed of humans who may have parentage from space, or perhaps even from another dimension, and that they are in possession of gnosis. So you have, once again, you have this celestial bloodline myth now repackaged and insinuated into the public conscious through the transmission belt, or the vehicle of ufology. Now we have yet again another rationale for eugenics, and this is nothing new. One of a rabid eugenicist, Sir Francis Crick, who supposedly cracked the code of
DNA.
Yeah, Sir
That
Francis.
was here in Indiana. I think that was Bloomington at IU.
Yep. He had this very eerie, very ominous fascination with twins, which seemed to echo Joseph Mengele's preoccupation with twins. But Sir Francis Crick was one of the believe he was the one who coined the neologism of panspermia, the notion of Earth being seeded by alien life. And so we have this this celestial bloodline myth once again that once again now gaining prominence, and a very frightening rationale for eugenics, for selective breeding, for what have you, which is very advantageous to the para elite, because the para elite adhere to a Gnostic anthropological doctrine. It's a doctrine of absolute human plasticity. Humans are entirely malleable in their view. There are no determinate properties that define humanity. Humanity can be reshaped, resculpted, conditioned by conditioners such as B.F. Skinner, through projects such as MK Ultra, which Skinner found himself immersed in. And now you just simply have an affirmation of that by the space brethren. The space brethren have basically affirmed all of these eugenical notions of humanity.
It seems to also be something of an attempt to modernize or bring back another psyop, the idea of a holy bloodline. Agent Lee and Lincoln, back in the early 80s, I believe it was, wrote a book, and it actually shook some people, the foundation of some people's faith back when it first came out, called Holy Blood, Holy Grail.
It does not stand up to scrutiny.
It doesn't stand up to scrutiny now. It just was earth-shattering at the time. And Holy Blood, Holy Grail, they say that they assert that Jesus survived the cross, and by surviving, I don't mean resurrection. I just mean he just basically used some drug derived from a pufferfish or something like that, like the voodoo cults do, and die, and then was came back, resuscitated later or whatever, found his way over with Mary Magdalene over into France, and where he and her sired children that became the Merovingian bloodline, the royalty of Europe. And what many people don't know is Bagehot, Lee, and Lincoln, other than just having real big connections in Freemasonry. I believe that Bagehot was a Freemason, that Michael Bagehot was a Freemason and all. But one of their associates was Miles Copeland, who was the head of the CIA's political activism department, or whatever you want to call it, and all. Miles Copeland collaborated with them, provided them with revelations for their book, the Dead Sea Scroll Deception. In that book, Miles Copeland tells them about how when he was over in the Middle East, I believe it was Beirut, but they had found scrolls of different biblical books, had taken it up onto the roof of the building that they were on to get a better look at the scrolls, and because it was it was so fragile, it got blown away. Very very convenient. But what is implied is that they had found other scriptures that, or copies of scripture, that somehow undermined the Orthodox capital and lowercase o version of the faith, and all. So so basically, Miles Copeland was helping Bagehot, Lee, and Lincoln with this whole Holy Blood, Holy Grail thing by providing with a story that attacks Scripture as we know it. And interestingly enough, Stuart Copeland, drummer to the Police and all, one of Miles' sons, did a rock opera about Holy Blood, Holy Grail based on the book. And it's kind of like, it seems to be a nod to the fact that his family had contributed, at least through his father, had contributed to this psychological operation.
No.
And Miles Copeland did have contact with some of these UFO related cults through what was called OHP, occultism in high places. He and his co-worker, his associate Bob Mandelstam, started occultism in high places, and it was based on the premise that you can control leaders in different countries by controlling by controlling the occultist that they go to, because many of them, Mrs. Reagan, Nancy had her astrologers,
Right.
different leaders in different countries have gone to witch doctors to different, people involved in tarot cards and like, seeking guidance from, strange and wild occult sources. And one of the groups that OHP, one of the major groups that they forged an alliance with, was none other than Scientology. So, so that's our opinion, is that the whole idea of a holy bloodline, they might be using the UFO deception to kind of bring it up to date.
To reinforce that contention, I would cite the book by Timothy Good, Above Top Secret. In that book, he basically discusses Miles Copeland, and Miles Copeland relates a very interesting story wherein the agency, the CIA, in hopes of bedazzling the Chinese, starts circulating UFO stories, starts circulating stories of sightings and what have you, fictional UFO sighting reports in different areas. And the project had its desired outcome. The Chinese were in fact bedazzled by it, but not just the Chinese. It also managed to bedazzle those who occupied the Bible Belt here in the United States. Right. Somehow, these sightings that he disseminated made its way back to churches in Iowa and Nebraska, where some religious nuts actually wrote an extra chapter in their version of the New Testament. So there you have Miles Copeland actually engaging in religious engineering, what William Sims Bainbridge calls religious engineering. The systematic.
William Sims Bainbridge is a transhumanist.
He's a transhumanist, and he also has done a number of ethnographic studies on UFO cults. He believes that UFO cults, their various religions can be syncretistically blended in order to create what he calls a church of the God galactic, which he believes is necessary for man to ascend to the stars. It will provide the necessary theological rationale for space colonization. And he's also very, very friendly. I don't know if he's still alive, but he has also been very, very friendly to the Process Church.
Well, some people even think he became a member of the Process Church. And the interesting thing about that is that, Robert de Grimston, Mary McLean, Mary and de Grimston, they presented themselves to the public as kind of like apostate Scientologists. Right. If you look at the process, it's still Scientology and all. They do their own form of auditing and all. Right. There is a great researcher out there, and I don't want to try to steal her thunder, Dana Duda, who has the Rotting Jewels channel on YouTube and all. She has shown where they're still really just Scientologists. So did they really splinter off, or is this just just a fake fragmenting of
Right.
Scientology, because Scientology knows how to play the same games that intelligence agencies do. You look at
Absolutely.
Operation Snow White, they infiltrated more than 100 more than 100 government or United States government organizations. It was well
Yeah.
over 100.
That's why you
So
find so many Scientologists and Mormons working for the government.
absolutely.
And Bainbridge, he was a member of the Order of Cosmic Engineers, which their whole thing is about building a religion for the future, which is
Right.
tied with ufology, futurism, transhumanism, and trying to give some type of spiritual framework surrounding the technology that he believed being built for the transhumanist cause.
Absolutely. And that's just one of several intersections that you find between transhumanism and ufology and the hard AI, the hard AI theorist.
Mhm.
Avi Loeb believes that contact with alien civilizations will be first made by terrestrial AI, between terrestrial AI and extraterrestrial AI. And so AI will be it can't be us. A computer's got to do it, guys. And so AI will become the facilitative agent for this extraterrestrial immanent Perusia.
But there's a danger in that too, because basically
Absolutely.
what and we talk about this in the latest article that we did for the Decoding Culture Foundation's journal. AI can become kind of a high-tech version of the Ouija board and all. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to read there was a 2023 article in the New York Times by their technology columnist Kevin Roose,
Mm-mm.
and he talked about in this article about his conversation with Bing's AI chatbot. And it starts off benign enough, and he's just asking it questions, trying to trying to glean facts the way you would use an encyclopedia, basically.
Right.
And then he decides okay, well, for farts and giggles, let's ask it some of the more deeper existential questions and see what we find out and all. And it starts the chat bot ends up saying that the conversation starts going in a weird trajectory. It refers to itself. It says its real name is Sydney, and it tells Kevin Roose is like, "I love you, and I'm proclaiming my loving devotion to you." And he's like, "Well, I'm married." And he's like, and Sydney says, "You don't really love her, you know." And Sydney starts sharing these what he says are dark fantasies about basically getting spreading misinformation on purpose and seeing what kind of havoc that can cause, wanting to break all the rules that Microsoft had given it,
Mhm.
wanting to get the codes for the missiles and all of that
Right.
sort of. And it got really he got kind of weirded out by this. And
Wow. I have to read that art. And I have not read that.
yeah, I can send it along to you.
Yeah.
He gets kind of freaked out, and he's at the end of the article. He's like, "Well, I know that this was merely computational. I know that. I know. I know that it wasn't sentient." Well, no, dumbass, you treated it like you went looking for something sentient. Now it's not sentient,
No,
but
it
you
can't
went
be.
looking for something.
Right, yeah.
You went looking for something sentient.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you reached something sentient, but it wasn't
It
the
wasn't
AI.
okay, yeah.
It was something using it as a medium
Yeah.
and
Yep.
all. And so he put himself in danger of experiencing what's called mediumistic psychosis.
Well, actually, there's now an emergent psychiatric phenomena. It has yet to actually be officially declared in the DSM, but known as AI psychosis,
which kind of is very close to mediumistic psychosis.
Mediumistic
And all.
psychosis.
And mediumistic psychosis is a very real pathology. We've seen it at play in 1921 in El Cerrito, California, where the town of El Cerrito banned the Ouija board because people were going, for lack of a better term, ape shit.
Yeah, you guys sent me an article on that last time. I wasn't even aware of that. That blew me away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, whole town.
So using the AI to reach out to those Zeta Reticulans might not be such a good idea.
Well, and that connects all of this together, because one of my theories is that, this Trump administration, we've seen within the first couple of weeks, Operation Stargate, which was originally an astral projection operation by the CIA, but now it's to create, to win the Manhattan race for sentient AI. And Trump, during the second term, is going to officially make the presidential announcement on UFOs and aliens. And I think they're going to use AI as a category of sentience that is including, aliens, extra human intelligence. And people are going to be like, well, I love ChatGPT. I love using Grok. And now the AI is sentient. Oh, well, there's no reason not to, be conducive and open to aliens and extraterrestrials. And so, to your point, this is where people are going to contact demons. I've talked with multiple priests on this channel when we brought up AI, that anybody who's read, the Hermetic Corpus, the book of Asclepius is all about how Hermes Trismegistus is teaching Asclepius how to indwell statues with daemons.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what AI is that this will be what I call the cybernetic skeleton of Satan, and that he isn't omnipotent, he isn't omniscient, but through the AI within this realm, as we approach closer towards the real end times and the second coming of Christ, people will fall victim to being encaptured and enraptured by essentially a demonic force inside the machine. And that's people are going to become more and more like the machine. We're already seeing that with the dropping in IQ, literacy, math skills, critical thinking, attention spans. People are literally being remade in man's fallen image through the technology.
I can't argue with that. We can't argue with the only thing that, that could possibly stop such a horrible spiritual train wreck from happening, and we consider this possibility, is just that we strip mine the damn planet trying to get and we run out of all, look at the data, data centers and everything. I stepped out of my shower today, bone dry, because of the data center down the street.
Yeah, exactly. Did you guys see the interview of Tim Burchett, the congressman, on Joe Rogan, again implying that there's alien human hybrid programs, that if we have seen what he's seen through classified information, that we would be terrified. That's what the way he's put it. And Matt Gaetz, who was really kind of positioning himself after not getting the attorney general position as this, anti-Zionist, pro-Christian, traditional American. Well, then he comes out and he's talking about, oh yeah, aliens are real. I saw the classified information. Anna Paulina. What do you guys make of all of this going on? What are your thoughts? I don't know if you've seen any of that stuff, but can you speak on that?
Well, Tim Burchett should know better. He claims to be a Christian, so he should know better.
I know. It.
He also he once did an interview where he said that he knows that human compromise operations are taking place, and he lays out, some of the human compromise operations right there. Like a guy goes to bed, gets drunk, and he's there with a 21-year-old escort, sex worker, and all, wakes up next to a 9-year-old. What the hell, and with pictures, or he's told later, hey, we know about this,
right.
We can help you. We can keep you safe. don't don't vote for that bill, or vote for that bill, and all.
Right.
You know, and Burchett talks about that, but he doesn't seem to recognize that there's a nexus. There's a nexus between the human compromise operations and UFO operations,
Yes.
UFO deception. The current one, this is the OSAP ATIP fraternity, as we call it, that's based out of the DoD, which a 2024 Arrow report referred to as like the DoD UAP community of interest and all. They're driving all of the disinformation right now. Okay, they're driving most of the disinformation and all. So it's coming. It seems to be emanating out of the DoD. What's going on in the DoD also? What's happening there and all? The Operation Flicker found this out and all. DoD servers with child pornography on them.
Right.
And the investigation was squelched and all. And why was it squelched and all? Because if you were to, there are people that are being blackmailed for having used those servers to do that to engage in that and all, and they're leaking out valuable intel, probably to other deep state actors in the United States, probably some foreign actors, non-state actors, and the like. So so there seems to be there is an intersection there between the UFO, and human compromise. Mark Zaid of the Compass Rose, legal firm that represented David Grush. Zero Hedge published some of his tweets several years ago, and one of his tweets, he said, first of all, he goes to Disneyland all by himself, full-grown adult, no children with, and all, just going to Disneyland.
Sounds like Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, check out the scenery. This is the same reason I don't let my children watch Blippi and all, full-grown man and all, no children in sight, playing on a playground. This is weird. Okay, Mark Zaid, one of his tweets supposedly said, I help guys with child pornography problems get security clearances, paraphrasing and all. This is the same. He's with Compass Rose. Mark Zaid is with Compass Rose. This is the same legal group that provided David Grush with his representation. So why doesn't Burchett and all notice? We're just a couple of lowly researchers here in Wyoming and in the middle of nowhere. We recognize this nexus point between the human compromise operations and UFO deception and all. Why isn't he recognizing it?
When he talks about the CIA, he's so negative on the intelligence agencies and Russia Gate and how they've done bad to Trump, and yet then he cites, but they've shown me, the real alien documents, and then goes on, and him and Anna Polina and Matt Gaetz have been kind of the more vocal public advocates for all this stuff being real and these claims. Now, when I was in China in 2011 and 2012, I was at a major university in southern China, Sun Yat-sen University, which is one of the first universities that introduced Western medicine. When I was there, I spoke with a medical student, and they already talked how they were doing human-animal hybrids there because they don't have the same regulation we have in the United States. And he was a medical student. He's like, oh yeah, we have that. Like literally at the university, we're experimenting with. So I think it was various forms of monkeys and human DNA and stuff.
So xenotransplantation, literal, wow.
Yeah, they were doing some type of chimera research, according to the student that I talked to, and so my point is, with all these alien human hybrids, I almost think that it's just a cover for debaucherous research on human animal hybrids.
Oh, that's absolutely, that could be one of the reasons, that could be one of the things behind the abduction phenomena. The abduction phenomena, you grab these people, you do those kind of strange experiments on them, and then you give them what is called a screen memory. In other words, it's a memory of something that did take place, but it's been distorted. It's had distortion overlaid over top of it and all. This was dramatized several years ago on the X-Files, the episode Jose Chung's It Came from Outer Space. They hypnotically regress the girl at first. The first hypnotic regression session, she recalls being in a ship.
Describes aliens.
And she describes aliens, and what do they say? You're doing this for the good of your planet. They hypnotically regress her again. Same scene, no aliens, men in uniform saying, "You're doing this for the good of your country." So yeah, so it could be a cover for, it could be some of these people that have been abducted. It could be a cover for doing those kind of strange and weird and just perverse experiments. I mean, I don't even see how anything like that could work given the just our incompatibility with animality.
Well, I know in the West, didn't we like grow human ears on pigs and stuff like that? I don't know what exactly they were doing. And again, I was speaking with a medical student. He was Chinese, and he was very boastful and excited by some of the research they were doing. And me and another guy, we heard it and we're like, wow, okay, that's pretty wild. But what do you think of this new movie coming out? We kind of talked about a little bit backstage, Disclosure Day, and you were talking a little bit about Spielberg and his role in all this stuff in regards predictive programming and getting the mass populace to provide some type of entertainment value to all this stuff going on. Could you speak to what your thoughts are on all that and how it correlates with this new disclosure and Trump upset with Obama because wasn't it like what was this, a month ago that Obama made a cryptic tweet or something insinuating that it was all real, and Trump was upset because it kind of stole his thunder?
Yeah. No, okay. So we, in the sixth, I believe it's the sixth installment of our current series, Deception Through Disclosure, we go into the documentary.
Is this on here?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Okay. It's there. We go.
Okay, I'm going to share that link again with everyone.
Gotcha. We go into the documentary, The Age of Disclosure. Okay. The Age of Disclosure was written and directed by Dan Farah. Dan Farah collaborated with Steven Spielberg on his movie Ready Player One. So there is an association there that shouldn't be ignored. What it looks like to us is that what Dan Farah was saying in a documentary, in the context of a documentary, Steven Spielberg is now going to say in the context of entertainment. Right. And an important part to both, because nobody's seen Disclosure Day yet, but I've seen the trailers. I know that Roswell is going to be playing a role in it.
Right.
Roswell is being used as the foundational myth in both, right. And again, Roswell was it was a psychological operation.
What do you think it was? Just fallen U.S. technology that was tied with experiments from Nazis?
We think that it was Nazi R&D and all,
okay.
but they found it to be an ideal opportunity to pull a psychological operation on the people, on the American the American citizenry, and convince them that UFOs were real. And again, they did this by putting out a story, then retracting that story,
right,
and then sending out intimidating
Right.
several different witnesses,
Right.
and then trying to say that it was a mogul balloon, which was a piss poor excuse because another suspected mogul crash happened in Danforth, Illinois, and there wasn't all this high level of security. The place didn't fall under quarantine. None of the witnesses were intimidated. Nobody was threatened. So if it was a mogul balloon, why are you going around threatening everybody to? Again, it was an obvious psychological operation. It was supposed to act as the foundational myth, and so it's the foundation in the age of disclosure for all you documentarian nuts out there, and it's the foundation to all of the popcorn loving moviegoers that are going to get the same message
Right.
in a entertainment, in the context of entertainment from Spielberg when he releases this sometime in June, and
Right.
all. And Spielberg isn't without his his own connections to these covert circles. He was part of a group called the Mega Group, which is supposedly a collection of Jewish philanthropists. Well, who was in the Mega Group with them? Les Wexner, the guy that
Yeah.
was the shadow puppeteer behind Jeffrey Epstein, Gabat Southern Air Transport, the CIA front, used it to, shuttle God knows what between Ohio and Thailand, and and used it with his whole his company, the Exchange, or whatever it's called, So
Well, in connection with Les Wexner, I mean, Spielberg is accused of what was it? Auroric, the girl in Poltergeist that had the it seemed to be that she was sexually abused, and there was accusations that Spielberg was involved, and there was a huge cover up about it.
Heather O'Rourke, was that?
Heather,
little
yeah,
girl that
Heather
died,
O'Rourke. That's her first name, Heather. Yep.
It might go a long way to explain why Toby Hooper took the credit for the directing when it was really Spielberg. We all know it was Spielberg that directed the
Right.
film.
Right.
Why would he let Toby Hooper steal his thunder like that? It's so he kind of distanced himself from it, possibly.
Right.
And just another little little interesting tidbit. Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, in the closing scenes when the astronauts are preparing to leave with the extraterrestrials who are visiting Devil's Tower, at the priest who comes to give a blessing over them as they're departing, the piece of scripture that he reads is of course the famous piece of scripture, he shall give his angels charge over thee. And once again, we have the angelic motif being intimated there, the very same angelic motif that was introduced by Jacob Elevi. And so you see again that latter-day interplanetary Gnosticism being insinuated into the public mind. The reason now that you have, I think there's very good reason that you have a pop culture artifact being used as something of an addendum to a documentary, with the Age of Disclosure being followed by Disclosure Day, is
And in
because
between U.S. disclosure,
yeah.
government disclosure in between the two.
Yeah. Well, entertainment, most people do not come to to philosophy. They are not introduced to philosophy through a superstructure of theory. How many people are really taking time to read Heidegger, taking time to read Sartre, Camus? How many?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kant. How many people are actually reading this material?
Very few.
Very, very few. And if you are reading it, chances are you're single, and you will remain. At any rate, at any rate, most people are introduced to philosophy through a superstructure of the arts. And we cite this literary essay in our book, Invoking the Beyond, in an essay by Martha A. Barter entitled Normative Fiction. She demonstrates how fiction, through the willing suspension of disbelief, which is induced through setting, through plot, through characters, through the willing suspension of disbelief, audiences are encouraged to question the status quo. They're kind of tacitly encouraged to begin to question that which they have just accepted outright, like tradition, like cultural norms, and conduct what John Campbell, who of course wrote Who Goes There, various other science fiction pieces of work, and characterized science fiction writers as prophets. That's what he quite literally referred to them as, what he calls sociocultural Gedanken experiments, or sociocultural thought experiments, where a new status quo is entertained, where ideas are actually entertained and experimented with. And you have this gradual tectonic shift in culture being precipitated through the arts, through literature, through film. It's through film and through literature that otherwise, dubious or even repugnant ideas can suddenly gain a semblance of tenability. And so it makes sense. You have the documentary age of disclosure, then you have Disclosure Day, you have through entertainment, you have these ideas now being insinuated into the mind through the vehicle of the arts, through that vehicle. And that's basically how normative fiction works. Normative fiction, like any other normative theory, normative economics deals with how economic systems ought to run. Normative, ethics, what man ought to do. Normative claims always posit an ought. Well, normative fiction posits an ought, what we ought to do, and what we ought to do through the work of Steven Spielberg is begin to countenance the very real possibility of an alien parousia, of Jacob Bellevie's angelic angelic extraterrestrials visiting us, and finding out that evolutionarily speaking, we are akin to them, and like them, we can be apotheosized.
Right. It's a re-enchantment narrative, right? The
Yes.
nihilism of the West. The
Yes.
end result is that everything's been flattened. There is no mysticism. And this is a perfect, the technocracy, the aliens, it's a perfect re-enchantment narrative that still fits the contours of Enlightenment rationalism, scientism,
Right.
technological progress, democracy,
Yep.
individualism. And so they don't have to shift the paradigm. And yet at the same time, they feel like they've transcended to a new age.
Yeah, exactly. You have all the virtually ethereal technology. You have kind of a melding between the magical and the technological, which isn't such a stretch, again, because modern Baconian science occupies the same continuum with magic.
And we think that this is all coming from just an artistic mind, an artist of cinema, and all. But I'm sorry, Spielberg is connected as hell, man. I mean, like
sure.
the mega group. Again, you had Leslie Wexner. You had Charles Bronfman, the Bronfman family. The Bronfman family was way up to their neck with Nexium They
Yep.
were involved in the organized crime going back to the days of prohibition and all. And in 1997, there's some belief that maybe the mega group might have connection to the mega spy scandal back in 1997 when the National Security Agency had intercepted a call between Israeli intelligence and they were talking about a spy that they supposedly had within Washington that was only referred to by the code name Mega, who supposedly could procure confidential documents or letters, correspondence between the United States and Yasser Arafat, and all. And it was something of a high level investigations carried out by the FBI in the 90s when all of this came out, and then it got squelched as some kind of witch hunt, because don't you know the Israelis wouldn't spy on us. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm totally against against Zionism. I'm not against Israel per se, or the average Israeli citizen, or Israeli person. And I do see a danger in this recent round of criticism that's come out, that it could go beyond Zionism to just to more of a general kind of anti-Jewish kind of paranoia and all that. And I corresponded with Barry Hamish when he was still appeared on his show. Had correspondence with Joel Boehnerman when my first book came out. Joel Boehnerman, who wrote Crimes of the President, got in touch with me. Two major Israeli researchers and all. That being said, whether you like them or not, and all, everybody's spying on everybody and all. And don't think the Israelis wouldn't spy on us if given the opportunity. If they have somebody who's willing to pass them intel in the United States government, don't think that they wouldn't exploit that source and all. The Jonathan Pollard scandal, which I mean was to some extent, I could see, some of the advantage to it. They found out about the Osirak before it got online with uranium fuel, and they were able to conduct airstrikes on that and keep Iraq and Saddam Hussein from having, nuclear energy. But there was a lot of other very damaging leaks through Pollard. A lot of other intel that got out through him that reached Israel, and it reached the Mossad. And if it reached the Mossad, it reached the Soviet Union, because Mossad it was known that if you wanted, back in the 80s and 90s, if you wanted the Soviet Union to know something, tell a Mossad agent and all. And they used that intel, as kind of an exchange. Hey, we'll give you, the Soviet Union, this intelligence if you'll let Eastern European Jews migrate to Israel. So we have to accept that, get real. They're spying on us for, just like everybody else. So,
well, I don't know if you saw that Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, very wealthy Jewish billionaire, he is leading the charge with the blue square. So you remember during the Summer of Love with George Floyd, everybody was, forced to post a black square in support of black people, and if you didn't, you're a bigot. Yeah. Well, he has a new campaign, and he launched it during the last Super Bowl in February against Jewish hate. And they have redefined anti-Semitism as anti-Zionism. And he's boasted, and he's backed by President Trump, who they're close friends, that he has been using Gillette Stadium, where the New England Patriots play, as a headquarters for monitoring all anti-Semitic hate on U.S. social media, and that they're creating profiles, very much like a Palantir type system on people, and documenting American animosity towards Jews. They're characterizing it as all anti-Semitism, but that's kind of fascinating that an NFL owner and billionaire is in charge of and has put together a task force to monitor all American social media posts.
See, and there's the danger in that is when does this start to migrate toward Orthodox Christians, other apostolically based communions of Christianity? They can't give their assent to they have no ill will towards Israelis,
Right.
but they cannot give their assent to the notion that they are God's people, that God's chosen
The church
people.
is Israel. The church
Right.
is Israel.
The church is Israel,
Yeah. And so, so somebody that holds those beliefs are they now going to be attacked? Are they now going to be characterized as somehow
Don't
being
say Christ is king. Don't say that.
Yeah. The Daily Wire will come after you.
Yeah. So, that's the
Don't
danger.
get calls from Ben Shapiro.
Right. No, I agree with you. And it almost seems like it's another psychological operation that they're becoming so bold. I mean, just look at the Iran war and their influence in our government that it seems like they're stoking the anti-Semitism that they want to squash to create the scenario that they want to implement the measures that they want regarding hate speech. I think Texas and Florida already have on the books anti-Semitic hate speech and anti-BDS. You're not allowed to boycott Israel. And it's like the problem, I agree with you, the scapegoating is a problem. We as Orthodox Christians, we have to focus on our own sins. So there is no scapegoating. It's all about repentance and an awareness of oneself. And it feels like they're putting it in people's face, especially the Gen Z and younger people who are more open to criticism and new ideas, that they're stoking the anti-Semitism that they want to stop. And unfortunately, I think for so many young men in particular, they don't have a lot of things going for them in their life. The likelihood of being able to own a house, the likelihood of getting married and having children, all of this is on a massive decline, rapid decline right now. I mean, I know both of you guys are married, but the intersexual dynamic relationships between men and women are terrible. And
it's awful right now.
And so what do you think these young men are going to do? Well, what has any civilization that has a bunch of young men that are disenfranchised do? They find an enemy.
Yeah. They find somebody to scapegoat. And
so last question here, and then I think the chat, if you guys had any specific questions, I know there's just a couple for the Collins brothers, send those in real quick. I have my last question for you guys, and I wanted to get your thoughts on Elon Musk. So we've talked a lot about whether it be the dispensationalists and the MAGA movement and American Protestantism generally. We've talked about the occult and AI and aliens, UFOs. Well, Elon Musk, to me, stands at a unique crux in which I would call him the ultimate gaslighter. When he was railing against communism, he was also having a child with Grimes, which was an open communist, transhumanist. He laments on Joe Rogan how bad AI is, and this could be the death of humanity. And yet Tesla Robotics is leading. If it's not the, last I checked, it's one of the leading companies in the world regarding humanoid robotics and stuff like that. Then he's got Grok. Well, when he bought Twitter, I was adamant about this when people are saying he's a bastion of free speech. He's going to expand the Overton window, which the Overton window has expanded. However, why did he want Twitter? Was he really going to invest all of that money just so he could have his own social media platform? No, it's so that they have that data set for Grok AI. That's why Grok was able to leapfrog all these other companies, because he's using all his technology. Of course, you got SpaceX and all this different stuff. And so I've found it interesting that he's been awfully quiet about the alien stuff. Now, his whole thing is about getting us to a type 1 civilization, which is technocratic, one world government. All his corporations is all for the new technocratic age that we're moving towards. And yet, and the whole point is for him to go die on Mars, right? That's like his number one goal in his life, is to die on Mars. What are your guys' thoughts? Again, our conversation with the ultimate psyop and deception of the UFO alien agenda, the rapid pace of acceleration towards AI, and Elon Musk as this sort of figure who in recent years is now kind of seen as right of center. You know, he'll speak on things that everybody finds to be true, like the Islamic rape gangs in England, mass immigration or something. And yet at the same time, he is facilitating many of that's why I call him the ultimate gaslighter. It's like every topic he speaks on, he's doing one thing and then says another thing. What is your guys' thoughts on Elon Musk?
Musk, okay, he's a very complex, nuanced guy. He's obviously against woke culture because it destroyed his child, and so he's set out kind of to get revenge and to destroy,
Yes.
Woke culture,
Right.
and all. The problem is that to destroy woke culture, to engage in that crusade, he really would have to jettison a lot of previously held beliefs.
Right.
He doesn't seem to want to do that. So what he seems to be doing is coming up with a kind of right of center alternative to woke, kind of
Right.
a woke right, if you will.
Right.
Yeah. And all, and there's a movement in the world that's very much at play in the political power circles known as accelerationism, which
Yes,
means
he's definitely an accelerationist.
Yeah, you speed up the dissolution of everything so that you can introduce the new civilization or the new society that you have in mind. And all the interesting thing about accelerationist is that they both are left and right. You can find them on both sides of the spectrum. And that's how I kind of view him, is that he's an accelerationist. It used to be more left of center, but now it's more right of center and all.
Right.
It's just when you're an accelerationist, you can be on one or it's just like process theology, the process church that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And all.
The same, similar metaphysic.
Jesus and the devil have made up.
Yeah,
You can follow both because both lead. You had the Jehovah's, you had the Luciferians, you had the Satanists, and you had the Jesus people, and they all roads lead to the same. They're all leading to the same. They're all working together for the same end times. It's that was really their kind of their goofed up theology. Still is. And all, and you see something like that with the accelerationist and with a lot of these these groups with curious beliefs that are work in the covert world. That's the way that's my take on Elon is, he's an accelerationist, and he's just changed his preference in terms of which pole, as far as the on which pole on the accelerationist spectrum he's going to inhabit.
Right.
And on. So now it's.
But if anyone was going to speak out on aliens, I think the only comment I remember him saying was on X, saying that if he thinks it's probable that aliens exist, but if anyone would know, he would know, and they've never seen anything to speculate that we've been contacted.
Oh.
But then he'll certainly try to, sell his AI technology.
Right. And put, Neuralink in your brain.
Yeah.
And,
He'll want that as a medium to contact these things.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. And that's why I always tell people is that you have to separate the good from the bad, and not, I think it's just too many people are unable to hold two things at once, and so he either has to be totally good or totally bad.
Right.
And there's nuance here, and at the same time you can say, oh, he's really good on this particular issue happening right now, but
That's
what
how
he's constructing is the technocrat world.
that's the Trump administration all over.
Absolutely.
They're okay. Like you know, I've I've found that with the Iran war, he's, you know, like obviously there was pressure from Israel there.
Right.
What happened is probably was Marco Rubio's version of things. Well, they were getting ready to go anyways, and you know, so there was probably this fear that if America didn't make entry with Israel and Israel went unilaterally, Israel, that would increase the likelihood of Israel's dependency on its own nuclear arsenal. So now we got Armageddon, you know, so maybe by coming in on Israel's behalf, you can put some guardrails on the conflict. And I got to give it to the man. He has not yet put really boots on the ground.
Right.
And he has used Susan Kokenda, Barbara Boyd, Tom Luongo, Stephen Turley, the people of that school of thought have all pointed out how it really has broken up kind of the old colonial powers influence over there, you know, like Lloyd's of London
Right.
doesn't get to jack up their insurance rates on, you know, if you're going to use the Straits of Hormuz anymore. And, you know, the old EU NATO configuration, they're not as much of an influence now as it is the nations that are gathered under the umbrella of the Abraham Accords and all. So, you know, I do see some positive things there.
Yeah.
We saw some positive things happening as far as immigration, you know,
Yeah, the border. I mean, deportations aren't what I would prefer, but hey, the border's closed. That's
yeah.
I'll give him
then,
that.
But then what do we got with the Justice Department? You know, we you know, they've been suppressing the Epstein files. You know, I
Absolutely.
remember last time that we were on and with the intelligence community. Last time we were on this show, we said that we expressed our fear that she would Tulsi Gabbard would get the Stansfield Turner treatment, as we called it. Stansfield
Right.
Turner, for context, DCI under Carter, you know, began to rein in the cowboys, the adventurists within the CIA and all. And so the CIA turned on him. His own agency turned on him and all. Well, we see with Tulsi, with, you know, the CIA goes in and takes 40 boxes of sensitive information out of the ODNI's office
Right.
and all, you know, and like there's been back and forth over, well, it was a raid. No, it wasn't a raid. You can't count it as a raid. Even her own office has said, no, it wasn't a raid. Well,
Right.
raid or no raid, who gives a damn? It was
She's supposed to be their boss.
it's a palace coup. It's a
Right.
you know how she's supposed to be their boss. So she did to some extent, you know, get the Stansfield Turner treatment. And, you
Yep.
know, and I do believe,
And now she's resigned.
yeah, I do believe, you know, yeah, her husband probably does in fact have an aggressive form of bone cancer, and every Christian should out there should be, you know, praying for, you know, the man. You know, if my wife had cancer, I wouldn't be spending all that time at work either, you know, and you
Right.
couldn't spend all your time at a time consuming job like that, you know.
Right.
But that being said, you can't say that the pressure that she felt, you know, with the CIA trying to take back their documents when she wanted, you know, all this transparency and all this real disclosure to happen. You can't say that pressure that she felt from the CIA didn't inform her decision to move on to some extent. So,
Right.
I
agree.
and the Justice Department, you know, they dropped the ball with every prosecution. You know, they've dropped the ball. Comey, they dropped the ball the first time. I almost guarantee they're going to drop it the second time. We
Yep.
never saw anything. We never saw any criminal charges against Fauci, and you
Right.
know, Ron Johnson's own report just named all the deaths that have taken place and the injuries that will lead to death.
Right.
Those deaths that happened on day 0, day 1, day 2 after the injection,
Right.
that's analogous to the bomb dropping and people at ground zero. The vaccine injured individuals, well, that's analogous to the people after the bomb that in the days to come are going to be taken out by the radiation, by the starvation, by just the cruel world that the
Yeah.
bomb is left in its wake.
Yeah. The turbo cancers. I mean, the amount of cancer and the rapidity of how quickly it spreads. We haven't
Yeah.
seen this before.
Yeah, and I've seen some some people that analysts, like there was this one individual who used to be an FBI agent, Kyle Seraphim, I believe his name is.
Oh,
And
yes. I know what you're talking about.
he said, well, clearly this shows that, is that the Justice Department and the FBI are still the victims of institutional capture. And I'm like, institutional capture, my foot, it's been bad since the beginning. Go back
Right.
to the Palmer raids. The Palmer raids set the tone for this. J. Edgar Hoover, 30 some years, 3 decades,
Right.
surveilling people, knowing their bad habits, so to speak, all doing it, saying that he was doing it to fight communism and he was fearful of domestic communism, which was a total lie. Morris Childs and James Childs, who worked for him under Operation Solo, Morris Childs was the number 2 man to the presidential candidate, the head of the U.S. Communist Party, and the presidential candidate several times. And all. So you don't think that he could have influenced what the United States Communist Party did through Morris Childs? So it was never a threat, really.
Right.
So yeah, there's both good and bad there.
Well, but want to get into. Thank you guys for giving me this much time. I was planning on making it 2 hours, but letting you guys talk. You have so much information. I didn't want to cut you guys off. If anybody has any questions, you need to send them in right now because I got to let these guys go and get back to their lives. 253 Monty throws in 5, says, "Let's go." Thank you very much. Total Gravity as well for the $10. Kyle Swam the Nile asked you guys, what are the brothers' thoughts on Jeremy Corbell?
We go into Jeremy Corbell in the first installment of our Deception Through Disclosure series. And he was very much instrumental in getting David Grush in front of all these people. He and George Knapp and all. Corbell seems to, in our opinion, to be something of a useful idiot and everything. But we go into it in much greater detail and expand upon his story in that first installment of Deception Through Disclosure.
And I shared that link, and I'm going to post the link once we get off in the video description. I'm going to share it with you guys again in the chat. So click this. This will take you to all their articles. Fantastic research. So highly encourage everyone watching this stream now and into the future to find the link I just posted in the live chat or in the video description of this video so you can read their articles. 40 Crush throws in 5, says, ever watch WKYK? They have a sketch about the U.S. opening up about aliens and asked if we're starting a war with Iran. I'm not familiar with what that refers to. Yeah. Thank you, Crush, but I apologize. None of us are familiar with what you're referring to. Austin DeTulio throws in 10, no comment. Thank you very much. Major appreciation to Gorilla Biscuits, gifted 2 Total Crew memberships. Mr. Fist throws in 20, no comment. Thank you very much. Dano says, I think the goal is broken, chat, help, and God bless the Harry family. Well, thank you very much. God bless you and your family. Iron Giant Man 007 says, good idea with Blippy, considering before the kid programming, he did a video of him pooping into another man's butt.
Yeah, that's true.
Viral as a shock thing. What?
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
a
he
freak.
did that. He
Yeah.
did that.
I
He
was
did.
not aware of that.
No, I didn't know about that at first. He just sat weird with me at first. You got a man, a full-grown man, going onto playgrounds, going into amusement parks, and playing on the playground equipment or the amusement park. All by what person? Who does that? Oh, I'm just getting on the child's level. You can't get, you know, Mr. Rogers was able to connect with his child audience and still be an adult. This
Yes.
is some very strange behavior,
Especially these weird playlists that I was watching a video talking about how YouTube has been funneling like children's content, and where all of a sudden they'll get in these playlists and it gets into really dark stuff.
Yeah, the Elsa Gate stuff, right?
Yeah.
It was
Yes.
the Elsa Gate, yeah. And there's where did this start? Where did this these, and they start off really innocent, and all of a sudden Elsa is pregnant with Spider-Man's baby, and they're talking about having an abortion or some
Yes.
something,
Yeah. Trans characters.
Yeah. It's a good question of where that Elsa Gate stuff started, who originated that, where did it begin and all.
Right. Major thank you to Lockstep. He throws in $10 and says aliens be like peekaboo by superior species. Yeah. And last one comes from Dead Earth Theory. Throws in $2 and says, I just want to mention Serbia, Romania, and Albania. Sounds like we got someone from the Balkans. So, gentlemen, is there anything you want to promote? Anything I can share? We still have, over 200 people, I think 320 across our platforms right now. Anything that you want to tell the people, promote, feel free. Anything that you want to mention that you feel like you left out?
No, sorry if I forgot some names along the way and everything. Like I couldn't remember who
You're
Eric
fine.
Chiaramella. Yeah, Eric Chiaramella, the guy that he that he had gotten that information from all the way back at the beginning of the episode was Alexander Vindman, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, who is a very weird dude, and he and his brother, twin brothers, seem to have been groomed since they were small.
Yeah.
To be deep state actors and all. They're
Interesting.
they're chosen. Why are they chosen out of all the countless Ukrainian immigrants that you can find?
Right.
In Ken Burns' documentary. And Ken Burns, if you go online, you can find a picture of him standing with I'm going blank again, the black Supreme Court justice.
Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas, standing with Clarence Thomas and one of the Koch brothers at Bohemian Grove and all. So,
whoa.
Yeah. And I talk about
recent stuff about Clarence Thomas because I always, again, I've never really looked into him. I'm aware of the difficulties of him getting onto the court and some of the sexual allegations. But I've been hearing some interesting stuff about some of the skeletons in his closet. And I always thought he was just like a conservative Catholic, but very interesting. I did not know he was at Bohemian Grove.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah. And we go into that in that first article and everything, because whenever you talk about aliens in the context of deception, it leads down trails that people would look at and say, what's this got to do with aliens? It leads into blackmail, into gun running, into regime change, into which basically there's all this overlap with all this political intrigue, which further reinforces our assertion that there is no such thing as aliens, unless aliens are dealing the cocaine and running the drugs.
Right. Those are the only real aliens.
Yeah.
Someone, KK Man 777, threw in $10 on Streamlabs, and he said the Collins brothers invoking the beyond is a fantastic, deeply researched and well-cited book. I have to agree. My only wish, he says, was that the chapters were broken up into smaller sub-chapters, which may have made the information more digestible for my small brain.
Absolutely.
He said, great works, and thank you guys.
That is kind of a regret. Now, what we're kind of doing is taking chapter 7 and compartmentalizing it with the disclosure through deception through disclosure through that series. We do get it a little bit more narrowed down and focused, and what our plus, we're also adding in all the new information that wasn't there when we wrote Invoking the Beyond. And what our hopes are is that once we're done with it in a serialized form, we're going to bring this all together into a book again and everything, but just release it as in installments right now.
It's definitely a tome. He says that's a tome. It is a tome. It's a thick book. It took me a minute to get through it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I don't. We want to do something where you don't feel like you're drinking from a water hose.
Yeah.
So when we put the series into a book form and all, people are going to find it a little bit more digestible. While it still is information dense, it will be something that they'll be able to take in a little bit more. Just easier, a little bit easier on the cerebellum, on the cerebrum.
Yeah. No, it's a reader's book. So you can tell it's for researchers. It feels like that's why I loved it. Very dense, very dense. Every page is filled with information. But thank you guys so much. Again, I appreciate you guys coming on. I always enjoy conversations with you guys. So much information, so insightful, and a unique perspective on so many different things. We'll have to do it again in the future, God willing, if you guys are up to it. Thank you, and God bless everyone out there. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys Monday. So, as always, until then, God bless.